Hey, everybody. I'm Scott Ramsey. I'm the Executive Director of the New York Cider Association, and I want to welcome you to this cider tasting with Tim Buzinski from Artisan Wine Shop in Beacon and Kimberly Kay from Metal House Cider. We're so thrilled to have you both here. Thank you for joining. So I'm going to back off and let Tim, you'll just take it away and run this really amazing tasting and conversation with Kim. But I wanted to let everybody know that there is the option to actually submit questions and any chat or feedback you have in your comment section if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. So towards the end of the conversation, Tim will open it up for conversation and chat. So feel free to play along and share with us your thoughts and questions as we have the conversation. All right, so Tim, I'm going to drop off and take it away.
Thank you. Hi, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm good, Tim. How are you?
Good, good. How are the trees faring during these hot, humid sort of days?
Well, they're dry. So
they're dry.
Yeah,
that's the way I feel
we've
too.
had really no measurable precip for close to 30 days, if not more.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty severe drought. It's not new. It's just early. So
yeah.
It's only the end of June. So this is usually the end of July or August we'd be in this situation. But so it's very early for us to be here. The good news is that they look great. Apart from having dry, curled leaves pleading for water, they did survive the frosts, all of the frosts, so many frosts. And so we really have a very promising crop, bigger than we've ever had there at this big orchard.
Cool.
So that's really exciting.
Just in general, like when trees kind of go through a drought, is it size of fruit, or is it the production of fruit or quality of fruit that really do you see getting affected by that kind of thing? Or combinations?
I think there's a combination. For us, there's been the years we've been at this orchard, there's also been so many other things at play where machinery breaks down or things we're spraying that we're testing out. So but things look really good right now. So
good. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Everything's crossed right now. And there I've knocked over the microphone. So Kim, you're off the hook.
At least it wasn't your wine.
No, that's true. It wasn't my cider. All right. So there we go. We're back. So tell me a little bit about you and your husband, Matt, how you guys got into the business per se.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to own an orchard?
Well, we live on a little, well, we're city transplants, really. We've been here about 11 years here in Esopus, and we have this little sliver in a ravine that's just underneath. I'm looking at it, the Chapinique Ridge, and it had about 50 old apple trees that were very overgrown and neglected, and an old apple barn on the property. And really, we lucked into that. We were not looking for it. I was 8 months pregnant. We needed to move, so it was not our intention to make cider when we, but I think this combination of losing your place and having this really huge, this very dramatic contrast in landscape, coupled with having an infant, just forced us or led us to really go in and see what was here. And part of that, I think Matt always has this predisposition to want to ferment things, but also we really learned to love these trees. And so I think it was the trees first, and now the cider that we love. But
sorry, we're going to have phone calls here.
That's okay.
We're at the shop.
I have a train that we most likely go through.
Anyhow, completely unexpected aspect of having closed at 7:30, but
That's
still
okay.
getting phone calls. People need their cider.
That's good.
Here we go. All right, so so you started to fall in love with the trees. You sort of started to kind of I'm sure you were using them for other products before that. And then how did you just decide? I mean, you said Matt has a predisposition probably to just ferment, everything or whatever it was. So you just started fermenting cider and then.
Right. I was doing all kinds of canning and baking, but we started making cider right away. And we made cider with just the fruit from here, untreated, unsprayed fruit. And it was a funky, rich, still cider with some nice tannin, and that didn't make a lot of sense for the varieties that probably aren't very remarkable that are here, but they weren't sprayed, and that was our guiding light once we did start to look for additional sources of fruit. We wanted to stay with the untreated fruit as the most important.
So how did you come up with the idea, not the idea, but how did you come up with how did you make the decision to actually do traditional method sparkling cider as opposed to just doing any of the, like a less intensive process or whatever it was?
I think, we wanted to make the best bubble we could with the best aroma, with the best fruit available to us here in Esopus or close by. And when by best fruit, I don't mean cider varieties. We don't have the really star cider varieties here yet, or we'll reintroduce them. But I mean untreated and unsprayed, no synthetic sprays. So yeah. So yeah, I think you just wanted to create the best. And speaking of which, so I'm gonna start pouring myself some of your Ammir. I don't know if we can actually see that. Really, it's hard to do that. There we go. There it is, the Ammir. So I'm gonna have some of that. Now, your first cider you call the debut, and does that have a kind of correlation to this cider per se, or not? Well, am I wrong? Yes, because the debut was the only thing we made that first year, and we made 250 cases of it, I believe, and we disgorge in batches of 100, and we release it as it's called for, and so we have some left, and it's now 4 years, almost 4 years on the lease. So some really interesting things are happening with that flavorful profile that were never there. I wish I had sent you a bottle so that you could.
No, I'm coming to get one. Don't worry. Or maybe 4 or 5, because I just want to grab a half case and I want to do the same thing you're doing, because I mean, I've told you this before, and just for everybody out there, the first time I tasted that cider, I said to her, I was like, obviously you guys have been making this sparkling cider forever. Like, why did you just decide to start releasing it now? And she's like, no, that was our first shot. It was our first attempt. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful.
I'll never forget that. I never get tired of you hearing.
It blew me away as to how perfectly good that a first attempt at anything could be. I was really blown away. So still to this day, I never forget it. So anyways, and
we didn't have enough experience to be setting out after a certain style or anything. So we knew we knew what we liked. We knew how it's made.
Right.
And we wanted to apply the fruit that we have, the best fruit, the untreated fruit, to that method and just see what happened, and that's what happened. But there's some other things that happen around debut too. And that is, like, neither of us have ever produced or sold a product before. We don't have any experience. So the idea of having to wait a few months before it was ready was fine with us. We had a lot to prepare. We had to figure out how to call people, how to get in the door, how to sell it, how to make a label, how to, and so, I think we would pull some out from time to time and just taste it and see how it was doing. And in February in 2017, when it said, I'm ready to come out.
Cool.
And that was about 11 months on the lease.
And so I was going to ask you a couple of questions around that sort of fermentation process. Are there things that you sort of like look for before you're sort of like waiting for in the development of the cider before you decide to put it down on the lees to do the, sort of like start the process of élevage or aging on the lees?
We're fermenting all the way to 0. So
right. And then is there a certain aromatic or a certain pop or acid or anything at all? Not so much.
I wish I could, especially with that year, I wish I could say that there was something we were tracking. It's all about time and luck, time.
And now, do you look for anything?
Now there are things that we're starting to look for in the blend, but also recognizing that, some of what we have here, the higher acid, the floral aromatics, are the fruit that we have. And we don't have the heavy tannin fruit, not yet anyway. Yeah. And so maybe, it lends itself to the champagne method.
Right. And so the debut and this cuvee, the Ammir, are both like super elegant and crisp. And they have that beautiful, almost white wine kind of like quality to them. What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think anybody who is not convinced about cider really needs to taste like this kind of like cuvee, because it's a really beautiful kind of like expression, and a lot of wine drinkers are going to definitely, I think, enjoy this and see that how versatile and how much they can incorporate this into their sort of daily drinking, because yes, we all know that it is daily now. So.
Thank you. That's all fruit. The Ammir is all fruit from this orchard in Esopus that we've been working on.
Cool.
And it did take over. That's why the label's similar as debut, and the debut was kind of the flagship. And Ammir is short for Ammiralia, which is the flagship or the captain, or in Italian.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's excellent information. I gotta incorporate that.
But it's sweet to us because it's the first harvest from that place, and it's all fruit from that place. So
beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Obviously, you guys have just even from that story alone, it sort of is indicative of the rich sort of like lives and history you have. And I don't know if you can say a little bit about what you and Matt had done before you kind of like came to this sort of métier, as the French like to say, this way of working per se, or this job, this profession, vocation.
Matt's a builder, and by trade, and I'm a painter, and I think probably we have been told we have a tendency to bite off more than we can chew, which is how you get involved in a 900 tree orchard that you have no experience doing, But we both have roots in the farming community, and I've meant to say before, as far as the méthode champenoise, it's very important to note that Matt's father is Steve DiFrancesco, who is the lead vintner at Glenora in the Finger Lakes, and he is a master at sparkling wines in Riesling. Yeah. And so, even though Matt has not spent time in his adult life in the wine world, I think that he, really has an innate understanding of the chemistry, but also the alchemy. Like, I think he just has,
yeah.
So yeah. That's, yeah.
No, I completely understand that. Just I'm sure he didn't. I mean, knowing the way winemakers are, you cannot, even if you're a kid, you can't really escape, I don't think, some aspect of production and harvest and something. So I'm sure he picked up quite a bit of little technical details that are super helpful. So that's great. You mentioned this 900 tree orchard, and that sort of I figured we might as well just sort of talk a little bit about that. How did you find that? Why did you even look for it? Because I understand that it didn't like find you. 900 Trees just didn't like find you. You found them and kind of looked for them somehow. So tell us a little bit about that.
So we were, in an effort to keep using untreated fruit, we were picking from, there's lots of abandoned orchards around here that have been out of production for easily 8 years, 10 years. So we were going that route 2015 and 2016. But 2016 was a bad year for us, a slim year. And we decided, we had long heard about the Robert Livingston Pell farm, the Pelham farm in Esopus. And I started trying to research the daylights map, the old I think it's 1851 or 53, this daylights map that showed he had 1,200 acres. It's really a mile away from us. And then compared them with present day parcel maps. And then I found some owners, and then I wrote some letters. And it was just very, very much luck. I would say that, I reiterate that orchard is not our land, and we have an agreement with a very giving orchard owner who concurs with our attempts to kind of bring back a historic orchard in a holistic way. So, and then while we do have a little bit of farming background, not this kind. Mm-hmm. And so we would never be able to do this without the help of our consultant and pomologist, Mike Biltonen, who's very, very patient with me while everything I have to learn. But we have planted, over the past 2 years, we've planted 200 cider trees there. We're trying to bring back some of the varieties that are more associated with this country, our heirlooms, rather than those from Europe that are so difficult to grow here. So we know that the northern spies were all over the place. We're bringing some of those back, Rhode Island greening, of course, Esopus Spitzenberg, a whole variety of things there. I think I got off topic there, but
no, you didn't. Not at all. I was actually going to ask you if what, if anything, what have you learned from tending this 100-plus-year-old, in some cases, trees? Like what? How has that informed you in many ways? Because I'm sure it has been educational.
Yeah. I'm so.
And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to actually move to the next cuvee, which is the Arista, which is this one. Hard to manage going backwards. So this one is. Sorry, I got to finish the first one.
This one is a mix of the sustainably farmed fruit that we have grown, and also wild fruit in the Catskills. There's one place we go in the Catskills, friend's place, where we pick, and so it's a combination. It's got a higher acid, and then it's dosaged with a tiny amount of honey. And this gets written wrong. I've seen it written wrong a few times. It's not fermented. It's not. Right. The liquid.
The fermentation process doesn't happen with honey. It's the dosage. It's the finishing with the honey.
And it's teeny amount.
Right.
And so it's really more in the nose, I think.
It totally is in the nose.
Yeah.
It creates that beautiful floral complexity that is evocative of so many flowers that apples just alone don't give you. So really, really super interesting to just nose this cider for a period of time. So anyhow.
It also, if anyone picks it up, it has a prayer, an homage to the god Aristaeus and to the attempt to keep farming holistically, and that it really is. As we know now, we cannot deny we're in a frontier land. We've got to find another way.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to that idea as well, for sure. I was just. Go ahead. 900 trees, 100-year-old plus. Teach you anything about apples, pomology, whatnot?
So much. I don't know where to begin, but I think I'm learning to listen. It's the biggest thing. You have to really listen to the trees. You have to trust your instincts. I feel like I'm learning about time. The time it takes for trees to respond and to decide something, which direction they're going, or what, they do odd things, and they are saying things. And if you're listening, most tree people will be nodding their heads out there.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting the way I feel like they constantly have me imagining what their lives have been like, especially those Cortlands.
Mm-hmm.
They're majestic. They're probably 125 years old easily. Wow. So how did not much has changed in this landscape. So you could imagine how they've watched people travel in carriage or by horse. Or I often think about they might have seen how Black people were treated just as they were starting to set fruit as young trees. And then through the 20s, and through the 40s, like they've seen so much.
Yeah.
I'm learning how to accept it if they decide they're not going to be with us any longer, which is hard. Most of them are doing pretty well, and just celebrate it whichever way it goes.
Yeah.
Which is sort of a hard thing for me.
It's a really beautiful way of thinking about farming and thinking about the existence and life of these things that we would call plants, but it's like they are individuals to some sort of like level that we maybe aren't tapping into on a regular basis.
Right.
So that's a really beautiful sort of sentiment. I want to kind of shift the topic a little bit and talk a little bit about some recent things.
Mm-hmm.
COVID obviously is wreaking havoc and still wreaking havoc on our, country and the world itself. And I just was curious if what you're seeing the impacts, for instance, for you, but also maybe for the cider industry as a whole. I don't know if you're hearing these kinds of things.
I mean, I've heard a few things, and I've heard some people who have been clipping along. For us, it totally stopped. Now, that could be partially from making a pretty high price point product. It's just not what people are grabbing. It's very celebratory. It's $25 bottle of cider or whatever, however it is. But we have a lot of restaurant accounts, and of course all of that just stopped. So March and April stopped, which is fine. I mean, I feel like we need to take a moment and stop.
Right. Embrace that to some degree. I mean, I think that, in all honesty, it's like that's the moment you have to kind of embrace the fact that this is where we're at, and this is the best thing. And I think that's what it sounds like you're doing.
Well, I mean, not that we have a choice, but I think it's good to see what the signs are. So,
yeah.
I think we're being forced to really consider supply chains, and which should make us value relationships over profit, right?
Yeah.
Small scale, doing what you can to make a living, keeping your integrity over your product, living within and being integral to a community. Like that, that seems like enough. That seems like a good goal. Why do we need so much more? And that's what's interesting about what we'll talk about, I'm sure, is that profit margin,
Yeah.
How can we live with, anyway, reconsidering a lot of things.
No, it's true. And I think that's maybe some of the positives in some cases, as much as this is, COVID and quarantines and shelter in place, or however it's been phrased in whatever community, in some ways it's taught us some really positive things. I have some friends that, are just cherishing the time that they're getting to spend with their teenagers in a situation where, it's priceless in some ways. Not that it's, again, a choice, but there have been some positives that have come out of that. So
right, yeah. I needed to follow up and know what my son was doing in school and how he was, I needed to learn about homeschooling. I needed to learn where he was at. And I can't also go pursue accounts at the same time. I just can't. And that's part of the lesson. So
so again, I wanted to talk a little bit about your work with Harambee. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Harambee.
Okay. First of all, maybe just tell us what Harambee is, a little bit about the purpose, the mission.
So Harambee, the word is Swahili. I'm going to just make sure I have everything right. That is Swahili for bringing people together. And Harambee Kingston's mission is to work with communities to educate, enrich, and empower people of all ethnic backgrounds through events that promote African American culture.
Okay. So when did you become involved with them?
Right, this is a kind of a long story that I'll try and condense.
We're good.
So I had started working with Frank Waters, who started Black History Month Kingston, to organize the first Sojourner Truth Life Walk. So that's a whole nother story, but it's so related because her whole life until age 28 or 29 was lived here in Esopus. We live in the center of the 4 or 5 places that she lived, where she was enslaved, and then in Kingston. And so it started to become clear how all of these things are connected. I'm researching the Robert Livingston Pell Orchard, that's 1850. We're talking about she gets her freedom in 1826. There's some overlap, and I mean, obviously all the issues are still here, so they were still there. They're all contemporary at that point. I look out on this hill, which if it weren't obscured by trees, I would turn the laptop around so that you could see this gorgeous mountain ridge, where when she escaped, when she walked away from her last enslaver, she walked over this mountain. And there's beautiful bits in her narrative about how she's faced with the sunlight when she comes to this high point. And so, and then I'm working on a historic orchard that's very much the same as it was, and it's been in apples since the 1700s at least. I'm pursuing apples that are named for a lost tribe, and stolen land, and the fact that there's almost no Black farmers in this area whatsoever. I mean, down the road now, there's the ever growing family farm. They make rice. They grow rice, and it's amazing. But by and large, not a lot of Black farmers. Why is that? So there's that piece of that work that kind of been happening, which has more backstory, but I don't think we need to, that's
sure.
So then last fall, we saw that that Redbird Cider, that Eric and David were contributing a portion to of proceeds from their cider to an indigenous land action in the Finger Lakes. And it was sort of just like an aha moment. Of course, well, why wouldn't we be financially backing up what we believe and what we do? And it just feels important. This is where we work and where we live, and we need to know what the history is. And if we can support, even if in a small way we can support, if a few more people in a small way supported, it would take the power of this this project and this effort so much further, so much faster. And anyway, so I'm skipping ahead. So
okay.
The first year that we did the walk, I worked mainly with Frank organizing this walk. We walked from Port Ewan 4.5 miles in February to Kingston, to the courthouse where she fought to get her son back, when he was sold over state lines, illegally sold over state lines. And also work with Ty Wilson, who was mainly running Harambee at that point. And Harambee was, I think, getting ready to take ownership of the African burial grounds in Kingston, which people knew about since 1990, but it was a really long process of raising funds, doing these certain photographs to understand where the graves are, making sure, and then most recently with a lot of community help, saving it from being sold. And now eventually I think it is, or it's about to be transferred into the ownership of Harambee. Mm. So on that site, an interpretive center will be built where, not only will there be a place to educate from, there will be a place for everyone. It's a place of reflection, of meditation, and respect. But it's also conceived of, owned by, and a tribute to Black people. And so that part too just feels really important, how it's governed. So donating to Harambee and to the Interpretive Center felt like the best way to support, this kind of education and forward movement. We have an amazing community in Kingston that's seems to really embrace and lift one another up. So I think it's a way that we all have a chance to heal from our history's truths. Wicked.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I
mean, it's a long mouthful. I don't know if I made that clear, but I could jump around. But
no, I think it was beautifully said, and I mean it really speaks to the intentionality with which you live your lives and conduct your business and are involved, and that is what is called for at this point in history. This is a moment, and we have opportunities to make some very drastic changes. And you've obviously been working through this for a long time, and many people are sort of, coming around to these causes and this movement of, Black, Indigenous, and people of color and reparations and whatever it might be that we need to do to heal our country and our communities. And I think that's certainly only commendable. And it's just, that intentionality is really just beautiful to sort of witness. So, I mean, thank you. Thank you for witnessing that. That's really special.
Thanks, Tim.
But on that note, I'm going to drink more of your cider.
I mean, I think all of those, there's so much work that's been done. Every generation is I think, especially with Sojourner Truth, looking to build. You don't even realize it, and there were dots waiting to be connected here. And I think it's just the time is right. There's many people are coming to this point. Let's make, around her in particular, let's have more awareness. Let's really teach this.
Yes, and I mean, I think that's a huge part. The teaching and the education and self-education and self-reflection and all of those aspects are hugely important. And it's any vehicles that we can use to sort of, the more vehicles we have to sort of do that, create that process for all of us is extremely helpful. So this is a great project that I think it's great that we're talking about it now. So hopefully people are learning about it and hearing about this. And maybe there's other opportunities in our individual communities that can do
I think
that.
everywhere there are opportunities, and you didn't ask me, but can I say what I think white people? I mean, I think white people in general need to stand up, just really stand up, and then learn how to step out of the way.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Yeah.
Learn how to share, how to relinquish, how to protect, and how to follow.
Yeah.
This time.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think that's beautifully said. I mean, I think, my thinking is it's on me at this point now. If I'm not doing enough, then it's on me, and I have to do what I have to do, and what I need to do to further these causes, and that's, I think, what it is. It's stand up at a certain point and use your voice and use whatever you can, and but also allow, don't try to dictate it. I'm not trying to dictate anything.
Right.
I'm just trying to say these are things that need to be looked at, and these are the things that need to be changed, and this is acceptable or not acceptable. That's the way I think about it. So, anyhow, I don't want to kind of move too quickly away from this topic, but I just wanted to get a little kind of like, this is your newest release.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Leroy. Right? So This is the first cider that you have. Cheers.
I have some Leroy.
Great. Yeah. This is the first cider that you did not go through the full method champenoise, or traditional method, I guess I should say, sort of process. And why now? Why was that? So
just like we taste, we pull out a bottle and taste and see how it's doing. With the Leroy, I don't know if you remember the Brut Reserve, but we loved the Brut Reserve. Yes. And some errors led to the Brut Reserve, but we were never going to replicate that. And we made a blend, a 2017 blend for the same process. And we kept waiting and waiting for it to feel right. And it wasn't. So we left, it just wasn't, I don't know, coming out.
Yeah.
And then, so about 19 months, we thought, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
Is it going to change? We did a whole dosage trial. We disgorged 100 bottles, intending to, we were waiting for labels for almost 3 months, partially because of the pandemic. Yeah. And then, so now we've got 100 bottles of disgorged, dosaged, and we happen to pull out this one and just taste them against each other. And we like this one better.
Yeah.
I feel like it really shows off what happened in the barrel better. And it does allow us that it's a lot of work to disgorge every bottle by hand. And so that does allow us to offer it at a lower price point.
Yeah.
Welcome.
We knew it would happen sooner or later.
I thought we were going to make it through without it, but CSX going north.
Yeah, that's all good. I mean, I dropped the microphone. I totally, it's nothing can interrupt that. The phones were going off over here, total chaos at Artisan Wine Shop. So you're all good with a train going by. Okay, so this is certainly delicious, and I think if you hadn't actually told me that you didn't disgorge it, I wouldn't really. I wouldn't know.
How is it very loud, this train? I'm sorry.
No.
It's interesting because it's bone dry, but it's in the inherent sweetness. I had a kale salad or something that had a balsamic or a cranberry or something in it, and that sweetness just popped in there, and I had no idea that it, partially because we've been drinking the disgorged bottles of Leroy through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because we're not releasing those, so then I just don't know it as well.
Right. I
was surprised at that sweetness.
Yeah, no, it definitely has this level of richness to it that is, I mean, you might find that in some, champagne houses that do almost like a little higher dosage on the end, but obviously this is totally bone dry, but it gives you that little extra touch of richness to it. So it really just doesn't, you're right, it doesn't sort of need that extra process to finish it in any way. Some of those, I would imagine this is true in ciders because I haven't done a ton of that, but some of those wines per se, before they're actually going through that dosage, they're pretty austere in terms of profile. Right. Whereas this does not have that sort of profile at all. So, so quite good, quite tasty. So thank you for bringing this to market as well.
Thank you for selling it at Artisan.
Yeah, no, I mean, you convinced us at bottle one, so it really has not been hard after that. I just wanted to kind of like take a moment to, talk about like where people can maybe interact with you guys, because I know you're at least one or maybe two farmers markets, or
right now just one, just a Cold Spring.
Just a Cold Spring, okay.
And that's 1st, 4th, and the occasional 5th Saturday.
Okay. 1st, 4th, and occasionally, if there is a 5th, there's a 5th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a lovely little market. Really.
It is. It's a beautiful market.
And so that's the only market we've really done.
Okay.
And I didn't have enough foresight to apply for more. I didn't really realize. I couldn't see in the pandemic what was going to happen, and I couldn't see about beyond 2 weeks. And so I did, I might have applied to others if I had, and then it was too late. So, but we have had people, we don't have a tasting room. We have had people call and say, hey, can we come? Do you ever do a tour? And so I have done some tours, and, we have to schedule it a little bit. But we could do that sometime. Yeah. Hopefully at some point there will be a tasting room, maybe a modified tasting room dinners or something.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Sign me up as one of the first visitors, please, for sure. And I am getting out there this summer because I have time finally.
Out there, it's only we're 30 minutes away.
30 minutes away, I know. Yeah, I mean, I left Beacon intentionally the other day, like just to get out of Beacon for a period of time, because it's like I don't really need to leave, and haven't been consistently out of town in some cases. So but yes, I'm definitely coming by.
We'll put you to work.
Anything that we didn't talk about that maybe, and before we mention that, I just want to mention again that in the comments on the side, we can definitely take some comments. So if anybody who's listening out there has a comment or a question for Kimberly, or even for me, but it's really for Kimberly, please feel free to pop that in. Scott will take a look, and then we can kind of like also sort of help navigate that. So please feel free to do that. But anyways, anything that we didn't talk about that maybe you're interested in hearing about or talking about?
Me?
Yeah. Yes, you. Sorry. No, you, Kim.
I mean, I always, I think about just what we're trying to do farming, and that little plea on the back of Arista. And I think about how we have a really idealist, like a lot of new apple farmers. I think we've heard about lots of other cider makers and apple farmers that say, I'm not going to use anything. I'm not going to spray that stuff. Mm-hmm. So we have a very idealistic approach that it can be done without synthetics. And it's partially because the belief that monocrops like giant apple farms and wheat fields, for all the promise we've built into them, I have more to say about that because I grew up in Walla Walla, and I'm the daughter of 2 generations of ag service men, and I delivered Roundup and Monsanto products tell the farmers as a high school kid, like for all the promise that we have around those things, you know, it's just very clear that they are like dinosaurs and they are inevitably going to fail. And what we really need are simply small, diversified farms. And yeah, so I guess support your small farmer, join the CSA, know where your apples come from. Because apples and grapes and these big monocrops, they're last on the list for people to say, oh, I want my cheese made this way, and I want my but these are harder walls to knock down with these big crops. So just a lot more work.
Yeah, I want to say that's actually true in beverage in general. Like, you know, I know some very hardcore organic, you know, people who only eat organic and know everything, but when it comes to wine, they want it does, or whatever it is that they're drinking, they just want to taste a certain way. So we haven't quite made that complete leap to understanding that there is that as well.
Right.
Okay. Anything on the horizon that you might want
to? Well, I guess I mean,
what's next for Metal House, maybe, or if there is anything, or is it just
there are some wild?
What you're doing?
There are a couple of things just really behind on labels, but there are things we're about to release meaning hopefully sometime in the next 6 months.
When they let you.
Yeah. There are 2 wild ferments, one from 2019 that's really fun. I don't know, did you taste that ever? The Disco Nat. And then the only thing we made in 2018, Still Falls the Rain, which is where the bars are all the way bumped back up, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful cider. So those are exciting.
Okay, we look forward to those.
And then if cider can be a wine, I don't know if can wine be a cider?
I mean, I think there are definitely people that are blending, you know, that you know.
Yeah, I would give a visual hint, but I can't. I
mean, for
me,
I
don't have any on hand.
Yeah, I think I know where you're. I think I know what you're alluding to. I mean, I think, you know, I like to try and convince people to think about cider kind of in the same way they think about wine, but it's just such an incredibly refreshing beverage. It's so interesting, and it's really one of my favorite things because of the refreshment and all that happens. And I certainly love all the different styles that you guys have put together, and I'm excited to taste those new releases as well. I just wanted to, again, take a moment if anybody has any questions, or maybe just reiterate how people can maybe get involved with Harambee or whatever it might be. This might be a moment to take that. So I want to open it up to questions, and you can tell us how to get in touch with that, and maybe Scott will kind of scroll that as well.
Yeah, I should have that available. I can't remember if it's HarambeeKingston.org.
I think it is something like that.
And then donating directly to the Interpretive Center, there's a page on Kingston Land Trust, which also has a ton of beautiful resources about the whole history of this and how many different groups have gone through trying to make it happen, and all about the youth group that we didn't talk about. That is really going in depth, researching all kinds of monuments and burial grounds, and, you know, conceptually looking at it, like all these things, local. Just it's a great project. I'm not doing it any justice at all, but check out the youth program. It's the Y Youth program. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, well, I'm just going to invite Scott back in if he's still with us. And I just want to say thank you. Oh, somebody just came up with a question.
Yeah.
Scott, would you mind reading that? I just want to.
Of course. Yeah, so it's from Greta. She was wanting to ask more about the Leroy. And Kim, you mentioned you decided not to disgorge it. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? And is the yeast then left in the bottle?
Yes, similar to a pet nat, although I wish I had the bottle with me, but I don't. So there's a substantial amount of the lees that's left in the bottle, similar to a pet nat.
Of course, one more phone call. Sorry.
That's okay. What else can I say? We're talking about Leroy's, Tim. We use barrels from a local. They're up in Ghent. I've suddenly forgotten their name. And that's kind of the beauty of aging these things, is going up and choosing your barrel and really smelling through the barrels to see what is right, or what resonates the right way.
Excellent. Yeah, and Kim, I was going to ask you, you said something. This has been a phenomenal conversation, by the way, to the both of you. Thank you so much. Very poignant and interesting on many levels. Kim, you mentioned something earlier. I moved up from the city as well, and I have this beautiful tree in my front yard, which I've been sitting looking at, during this conversation, and just the whole element of patience and learning to listen. I'm really fascinated by it. I really am learning that as well, hiking around this area and being out in nature and that kind of space. And that really does seem to, as I'm getting to know you and your work, that seems to sort of be a whole facet of sort of you and the capability to have that patience. And I would just be curious to hear you talk a little bit more about that. Was that something that was learned, or, where do you think that comes from?
I'm not a very patient person.
Nor am I, which is why I'm teach me.
I'm patient with things like gold leaf, and I'm not as patient with people. But trees, there's this regal nature to what you're dealing with, and so you have to listen. And I feel like a lot of it comes through pruning. Have you ever pruned?
Well, we're starting to learn how to trim our tree back, but I wouldn't call that, I'm not good at it by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, whenever pruning season is done, I go into a little bit of withdrawal now. And so then I start pruning. We have one peach tree. I do it wrong. And now I'm always looking for something to prune, because I feel like it is a way in. And then you're imposing your own human structure, or some idea of what it's supposed to be. And that notion is bizarre. So if you go and pick in the wild, and there are trees where the whole base of the tree is dead, and all the apples are at the top, but it's still thriving and it's fine. It's found its own structure. Who am I to impose something? Especially our trees in this orchard, they really were pruned. We pruned them wrong when we first moved here. We made a lot of mistakes, and so now they're wild looking. And so I guess when I prune with a couple different people, and they have set rules, and I didn't say it earlier, but so Leroy and I work in the line, he down one row and I'm down the other row. And if you go back, he's pruning for fruit, and I understand. And I encourage him to prune for fruit. But I prune much more conservatively. And I have to say that those rows of trees right now are so happy, because I didn't take too much. And that's not my knowledge, that's an instinct. Or I would say that's just listening. So
that's great. Well, and you're making me think too, like, the word pruning sort of almost seems restrictive, or, cutting back, but in a lot of ways, I think it's more about, giving opportunity for things to grow and foster, in a really special way that's inherent to the actual, plant itself. That's best for the plant, cutting off the dead, getting rid of shedding the dead, the part that isn't helping it. And, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Pruning's fun. If anybody ever wants to come and prune, I
That's
always
me.
need help. I always
That's
need
me.
help.
I'm there. I would love
Always
it.
need help.
Tim and I will
Not
come
number
out for
trees.
sure.
It's a lot of trees. So
Yeah, I did one session maybe a year and a half ago with a wine grower here in the Hudson Valley, and it was in, I think, Gardner, and the most relaxed, calming moments of my entire year were the 2 hours I spent pruning that vineyard. It was amazing. It was spiritual and incredibly beautiful. I think about that all the time. All the time. It was amazing.
yeah, come to the orchard in the winter when the sun's out and the snow's on the ground and you're up in a tree. It's just like, it's majestic.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll have to make a plan for that for sure.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Excellent.
Excellent. And we've got
Yes.
one more joining us too. So looks like Kia.
Yep. She says she'll come.
Great.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Well, so I'm going to wrap this up unless you guys have anything else you want to touch on or talk about.
I just want to say, tune into everything that's going on at Cider Week. It's all just amazing stuff. If you missed anything, go back and hit it, because it's really good conversations and really good learning and education, and I'm so enjoying it. So anyways,
Thank you very much. Yeah. So yeah, you can check out the schedule at ciderweekhv.com. We have our full event listing there. What's great about that event listing is not only are the events listed, but also where to buy cider before the event. So if you have the chance to run out, get some cider and come back and join the events. All of the events that we broadcast so far are on our YouTube channel at New York Cider Association TV, as well. This conversation will be there as well. So I'm looking forward to continue to promote this conversation. It's been fantastic and incredibly poignant. So thank you to the both of you so much. Kimberly K from Metal House Cider.
Go back and listen to the talk Stephen Satterfield and Megan Larmer last night.
Exactly.
And
super important talk.
And go visit Rose Hill. Everybody go visit Rose Hill.
Yeah, they had a talk tonight, I think at 6 just before this. So that's
go back and listen.
So go back and listen if you missed it.
Yeah.
I'm really, it's strange to say that I'm enthusiastic or excited, but I am actually, I'm very moved by this. I feel like there's really some exciting opportunity here, and I think we have to be thoughtful about it. And I think, we can do it. And I just think now there's a context to actually really do some very exciting and important work. And I so appreciate your involvement, and you're passionate about it as well, because we'll leverage that. We can use that, and it's exciting. It's good stuff.
It's lots of work to do.
So much work, but it's time. It's past time. So it's good. And Tim, I especially want to thank you so much for doing such a fantastic job of hosting and being such a phenomenal partner during Cider Week. It's one of our sponsors. We're so happy to have you. And Artisan Wine Shop here in Beacon is literally, I can almost throw a stone from my house, which makes me very happy.
Yeah.
So just fantastic partner to the cider industry here in New York, and we really appreciate that.
No, we're happy. We're happy to be here and be involved in it. It's a real blessing for us too. So
excellent, wonderful. This has been amazing. Thank you both so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tim.
So good to see you, Kim. Thank you for the conversation.
You too. All right.
Thanks, y'all.